Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Success Sadhana. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to a program today. The topic is the discomfort in, where suffering comes from and how to overcome it. The speaker today, Vaish, veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk. We're close to 15 members on Zoom and another 15 members on Facebook. I have Swekha helping me out in managing social media today. Good afternoon, Vaish. Welcome to another episode of Success Sadhana.
Thanks a lot, JM. I'm really happy to be here. Great to see you all. Also, a disclaimer, the Comfort Inn is a perfectly great institution. I'm not talking about them particularly. It's a metaphor for the material world. So we love you, Comfort Inn. It's a great institution. I recommend it. Everyone should stay there. Okay, so today I will be introducing the process through which we can be happy wherever we go. Actually, as I mentioned last week when we were talking about happiness and where it comes from, I mentioned a friend of mine who incidentally was a paramedic for 20 years, very insightful person, a master at meditation and a great teacher who teaches all over the world. And once, as you may recall, I said to him, everyone's looking for happiness and it seems like they're bumping into the wrong walls. And he said, actually, in his experience, everyone's trying to avoid distress and misery. It's more fortifying oneself to ward these things off. And when I get a respite from the onslaught of various miseries, which I hate, I know this is a family show and I hate to get macabre about it, but they come in three different varieties according to the ancient wisdom literatures called Adhyatmic, Adhibhautic, and Adhidaivik. These are all kleshas, in Sanskrit means miseries, things that make us suffer. So Adhyatmic means from our own body and mind. Anybody ever get any of those? Like a sore knee or shoulder or something goes wrong. Okay, that's Adhyatmic. And the mind also can, even if you're in an idyllic place, but the mind is disturbed because you're thinking, oh, maybe somebody hacked into my account, then, you just can't be there on the beach and appreciate it. That's Adhyatmic. Adhibhautic means that there are other living beings who may sneak up on you, like mosquitoes, when you're least expecting it. They're so evasive in their flight patterns that they'll bite you before you even know they're in the room. And the monkeys, especially the rhesus monkeys, the ones I live around in India, they're so expert. They essentially have 4 hands. Their feet are hands too. They can swing down without you even seeing it, swoop onto your rickshaw, take your glasses, and be on the roof before you even know what happened. And then you have to trade either bananas or tea biscuits to get your glasses back. Living entities are around us, and it may just be our own relatives. And then Adhidaivik means natural disturbances. Come from the around us. We're minding our own business, everything seems fine, then the earth starts shaking, and then it's not fine, at least from our perspective. So Adhyatmic, Adhibhautic, Adhidaivik, these are the miseries, the kleshas. And really, they're ultimately, as I'll be making the case today, they're coming from our own minds. Not that these events aren't happening, but the way we respond to them is key. And the way we're perceiving how they're causing us misery is key. And one of the antidotes to misery, in fact, I'll argue, the only antidote to misery is to be able to rise above the maelstrom of the mind, the maelstrom that is the mind. And for that, there's a process. Especially, there's a prescription for the present age we're in. There are kind of cosmic eras mentioned in the ancient wisdom literatures. One of them is called Satya Yuga, which is an expansive era during which the higher modes of nature like sattva predominate and people have no problem meditating. There's no distraction. And then the next stage is called Treta, and then Dwapara, and then Kali. So Kali, these four expansive eras have their characteristics, and the characteristic of Kali, the Yuga, or the era we're in right now, is defined by a verse that's in one of the literatures called Srimad Bhagavatam. It says, Prayanal Payusha Shabya Kalavasmin Yugejana Manda Samanda Matayo Manda Bhagya Hupadrita. One of the chronic diseases in this age is no time. Everyone's very busy going somewhere. No time for oneself, no time for introspection. And also a kind of procrastination when it comes to spiritual advancement. I'll put it off till later. And then later comes too late or not at all. And then it says, we're always disturbed. I think the verse, which predates cell phones by some thousands of years, maybe predicted the technological advancements we'd make that somehow distract us. I'm not a Luddite, by the way, not anti-technology or medicine or anything like that, but just saying we have to have enlightened engagement with the things that we have and not let them overcome us. So there's a way in the present age, Kali Yuga, when meditation is a little harder than at other times. There's a special kind of prescription which is mentioned in one of the special writings about yoga that says Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam kalona stevana stevana steva gatiranyata. And this indicates that the very potent process for this particular time to rise above the mind and the miseries that dwell therein is through this kind of meditation called mantra meditation. And it's a spiritual formula. Sound vibration, as we know, is very powerful. And when you repeat the mantra, either as a kind of meditation that you do yourself at home, or through musical meditation, which is very pleasant, and you hear the mantra, you sing it, you hear it, then naturally mantra, man means mind and tra means to lift or deliver, to take us above the whirlpool of the mind and bring us to where? To a vision of our spiritual self. So in our natural condition, the Bhagavad Gita says that we have what is called Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nashochati Nakankshati Samak Sarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param. Sorry for all the Sanskrit, but I want to present authentically. This verse says, in our natural state, we have these various qualities. Then the first one is prasanatma, which means we're naturally joyful. That's the nature of the spiritual self, to be joyful. It's only when I become absorbed in the mind that I forget my joyful nature. And the next one is nasochati nakankshati. These are no's. I don't have any hankering or lamentation. And the third is samak sarveshu bhuteshu, or fourth if you wish. Samak sarveshu bhuteshu. I don't envy other living entities. I respect other living entities because I'm not in competition with them. I see that I'm not fighting over scarce resources. And I see that within every body there's a living being that's just like me. The body's just a temporary covering of that eternal spiritual being. So therefore, I'm not feeling this sense of competition with other living beings, and I don't envy them either. So the mantra, the fruit of the mantra would be to lift us into that space where we're actually feeling joyful, that we're not hankering or lamenting. In other words, I'm okay. I don't need anything. Whatever I have is enough. Have you ever felt like that? I don't need anything else. And I'm satisfied the way I am right now, right here, right now. Nothing else needed. Not looking forward to anything, not lamenting over the past. I'm good. So that's rare. And then samak sarveshu bhuteshu. I'm seeing people spiritually. I'm not interpreting what their bodily type is, whether it's man, woman, black, white, dog, cat, alligator. I'm not saying that you should go pet an alligator. That's not what I'm saying. There is a real world that we live in. It's temporary, but it's real, so we have to interact with it properly. However, there's also a spiritual dimension that's beyond the material world, and that's the basis of the world. That's what makes it go. So sorting all those things out is not so easy intellectually, but the mantra does that. It's a spiritual vibration that helps us to clarify our minds and to see ourselves as we are and to see others as they are, spiritual beings. What do you think? You think I'm offering too much from one little mantra? Okay. So for meditation, the mantra can be done. Maybe, JM, you can bring up an example. The first mantra I'll introduce, and I'm going to go into some philosophy about the discomfort in, but usually we start with a little bit of introspection or meditation. So today I'm just going to go right into mantra meditation and see how we feel about it. So the first slide I'm going to show you says, phonetically spelled Nitai Gauranga. And I'll introduce you to a kind of meditation called kirtan. So this one, I'll make a simple tune, pentatonic scale, just very simple, and I'll sing the mantra, Nitai Gauranga, which is a mantra which is meant to open the heart and usher in compassion. So I'll sing it like, I'll say the mantra once, and then I'll be quiet when I play it the next time, and then behind muted mics, you can try echoing what I do. Are you ready? Everyone's ready. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Everyone. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Since I can't see everybody, I don't know if you were chanting or not, but that's the first mantra. And this is kind of a gateway mantra. If you chant this mantra, you'll notice that your mind starts to rise above the tribulations that it's prone to and identification with the material world and so forth. And you can enter into a spiritual state by chanting the mantra. The next mantra is called the Maha Mantra, and it has 16 words, 32 syllables. And I'll sing this one for you, and you can repeat after I finish the whole mantra and see how you feel about it. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Everyone. So that's an example of mantra meditation to music. And if I were to do it as what's called Japa, this kind of meditation you can do by, let's say, sit up a little straighter than you were a second ago, and then by closing your eyes and bring your awareness to your breath and relax, but keep an alert mind. And I'm going to repeat the mantra the way one does in Japa. This is personal mantra meditation, not in a group. And if you like, you can emulate and follow my lead and sing behind muted mics or say it. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So now you've done what's called kirtan, which is a singing meditation, and now this is japa. So let's do it a couple more times with your eyes closed. I'll say the mantra 2 more times, and just listen to the sound as you say it along with me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now bring your attention back to your breath and rub your palms together to create some external feeling, and then open your eyes and come back into the Zoom room. So those are 2 types of meditation. And so just as an example, this morning I have some guests here, and I pulled out a harmonium, and somebody else had a kind of drum instrument, and then we played a little while, and it was very nice. You could feel all the energy in the house and everybody in it be lifted by the mantra. And then if you want to start your day by, or end it, or continue it by doing the mantra, you can take a little time, sit down, or you could walk, but repeat the mantra and listen to it. It'll bring you back into your awareness of your spiritual self. And it all comes by the power of the mantra. In meditation, we're depending on the development of our mind, and we sort things out ourselves, but the mantra helps us. So you get that helping hand to rise above, that essentially pulls you above the turbulent mind. So now, why should we go above the mind? Let's look at a few slides. Keep in mind today, I'm talking about where suffering comes from and how to rise above it. So if you look at the etymology of the word, and I didn't include all the details here, but in the word suffering, we get a sense from the history of the word that it means to carry. In other words, I've picked up something, I'm carrying it with me. That's what's suffering. There's pain is natural, but suffering is optional. That's what do I carry around with me? That's important. And where do I carry it? In the mind. So one of the admonitions that were given from these ancient books on yoga and meditation, and don't believe everything your mind tells you, because The mind actually is a cloud, and it's collected, that is a digital cloud, and it's collected information from many different places over many lifetimes. And we bring it with us from one life to the next. And the mind becomes conditioned to think in certain ways. This is well known. We get into various thought loops. And if we look at the next slide, we'll find that the mind is oppressive. So this is from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the yoga literature. All the senses have been under the control of the mind since time immemorial, and the mind himself never comes under the sway of any other. He is stronger than the strongest, and his godlike power is fearsome. Therefore, anyone who can bring the mind under control becomes the master of all the senses. So this is the power the mind has over us. And in the Bhagavad Gita, if we'll come back into the room again for a minute, Krishna talks about how the mind is like a little factory. And it's got a conveyor belt bringing out many different ideas, thoughts, impulses all day long. And it never stops. So when Krishna's student, Arjuna, in the Bhagavad Gita asks his teacher, what is the symptom of someone who is fixed in spiritual consciousness? And this is the key to spiritual practice. We actually want to get somewhere. It's not sentiment, but we actually want to be fixed in spiritual consciousness. So what are the symptoms? So the first symptom that Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita of a person who's called stita prajna. So stita is a Sanskrit word which is cognate with the English word stand. Like if you're able to stand somewhere, you have standing. That means you got both feet on the ground. You're solid. So stita and prajna. Stita prajna. What's a person whose consciousness is solid, solidly situated? So he says, prajahati yada kaman. So prajahati means that person is able to withdraw from what? Sarvan partamanugatan. Whatever the mind brings out on the conveyor belt and says, here, take this, take that. Many inducements the mind gives. And the person is prajahati, which means that he or she is able to be selective. I don't have to grab it all. And I don't have to believe everything my mind tells me. So the person starts to notice that the mind is an instrument, and I'm separate from the mind, and is able to observe the mind. And this, the mantra meditation helps one do to sort out the difference between myself as the conscious being and the mind, which is basically offering me inducements or showing me a movie. So if one is able to make that space, that's the first little indication of some spiritual standing or stita prajna. Let's take a look at a couple more slides and I'll take some reflections. So, carried away by the movie of your life. So we have our life, we are the life. We're what animates the body, we're what turns the mind on. The mind is an instrument, and we're the one who illuminates it, gives it the life. And then, like a movie theater or a screen, the mind accepts the reflection of the world upon it. The way a movie screen takes the light coming from a projector upon it and tells a story. And when you go to a movie, oftentimes you'll find, in fact, this may be why people watch movies, is because you get carried away. You're taken away from your current context into a far-flung place, into somebody else's life. And so we have our life, we are the living force, and we also have our life situation, which is like a movie, but we're not our life situation. So the Srimad Bhagavatam says, the living entity is in distress regarding his self-identity. He has no factual background, like a man who dreams that he sees his head cut off in a dream. As the moon reflected on water appears to the seer to tremble due to being associated with the quality of the water, so the self associated with matter appears to be qualified as matter. So we get this type of metaphor throughout the wisdom literatures, talking about how we're observing the mind or the world through the screen or upon the screen of our mind. And this first sentence talks about how in a dream we might see and be horrified by seeing our head being cut off. But how's that possible? Because if our head's cut off, we're not seeing anything really, but we are in that state of shock and horror watching it. And then the second one is that we're looking at a pot of water and there's a moon. The moon is reflected upon it, but when the water moves, then it appears that the moon is moving. It's not. So similarly, there's a way when we identify with the mind, it's presenting to us various horrific images or idyllic images we may accept as real, and then they dissipate. So do the horrific ones, hopefully. And similarly, we may see that the world is moving, but actually it's the mind. Sometimes with certain kinds of drugs, people will be sitting there perfectly, apparently, in a well-appointed room, and they're sitting there apparently calmly, but they're seeing the walls are melting and so forth. They're not. But the mind is in a state of flux due to an outside stimulus, some kind of drug. And therefore they see the world in that way. So when we're looking at our minds and we're identifying with the mind, then we're experiencing these kinds of changes that take us into the past, into the future, and present us various scenarios which seem frightful to us. And this is the basis of where our sense of suffering and our short-lived sense of material happiness comes from. I think I have something, and then just as in a dream, when things morph, so too do they in our so-called real life of identification with the body and with matter. Well, that was a long, and I guess diatribes are long, but that was some kind of diatribe. And now I'll be silent for a moment and see what reflections you have so far. What did you hear or see so far that you can report on, that had any meaning to you, that were meaningful to you or had any impact at all?
I think Eric has his hand up.
Well, that's good.
Hi,
Eric,
everybody.
please go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you, first of all, for having these classes. Just hearing you and seeing you has really brought me into a state of happiness and just peace and feeling very grateful. And one thing I heard, you were talking about how everyone's looking for this happiness and trying to avoid miseries. You described the various types of miseries, the other living entities, mosquitoes and monkeys and natural disasters and our own bodies and minds, all sorts of miseries, especially in this age, which is so fraught with miseries. And then you described how the scriptures recommend mantra meditation as the number one prescription. And I really enjoyed the mantra meditation we did. I was just wondering, what is it about these mantras that's so powerful? Why are these mantras so important and have such an effect on us?
Thank you for your reflections and the summary, and also for a question, which help us go more deeply within the science of mantra meditation. The yoga meditation literatures which describe mantra, you'll find it, for instance, in the Yoga Sutras by Patanjali, and you'll find it also in the Bhagavad Gita, and certainly in the Srimad Bhagavatam many of the ancient historical literatures on yoga and meditation that talk about spiritual advancement and rising above the mind uh, begin the conversation by describing the qualities of energies in the world, and that there are higher and lower energies. In fact, there are different categories of energy. It's not all the same quality and kind. And what do I mean by that? So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives a catalog of the lower energies. He calls these separated material energies. And here's the catalog, or the list. It's earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. So these are known as the gross and subtle material elements. And then he says there's a categorically different energy that is mixed with that lower energy, and that categorically higher energy is what we call sometimes transcendental energy, or consciousness. Consciousness is the higher energy. A stone isn't conscious, it has no volition, but we do. And so he calls this para prakriti, or superior energy, superior nature. So the body and the self are completely different. These ancient yoga literatures don't prescribe to the idea that cognition or consciousness is generated by a combination of matter. They say it's two separate energies. So the energy that is us. I mean, we're all looking, or some of us, can see one another through this. And even if I look at you through this Zoom, I can perceive cognition. You're looking at me, I'm looking at you, and you feel the energy. That same energy is not there in a dead body. When you approach a dead body, you'll notice there's nobody looking back, nobody home. Same body is there, but there's no more light inside. It's gone. So the energy that we are resonates with the sound vibration of the mantra. Sound vibration of the mantra comes from outside the closed system of the lower energies, from the spiritual energy, which is a dimension beyond what we're used to seeing through our eyes or hearing with our ears. And so one may say, well, how do you know? Well, one test is to try it for yourself and see how it works, because the proof of the pudding is in the tasting, as they say. And you'll notice the effects of it. Like if you look at 3 white pills, they're all different. You say, well, what's the difference between the 3 of them? I can explain it to you, but until you actually take it and you feel the effect, it'll be hard to tell. So in essence, the mantra is a spiritual sound vibration. This is the theory, and it's a given. And you will experience a resonance with your actual self, with your conscious self and the mantra, and you'll also experience the benefits of chanting the mantra for yourself. And that can be quite convincing. Sundar.
Thank you, Rich.
You're in a forest somewhere.
At least,
Good to see you.
thank you. Thank you for the wonderful points and insightful points in the talk so far about how the self is different than the mind. Just wanted to add that sometimes, I purposefully go against the demands of the mind, especially in the beginning of the day, and those days are highly productive and focused. And on the days when I go along with the demands of the mind are the days when it's very distracted, and it's actually draining of energy. So just wanted to share that reflection.
Thank you for personal anecdote. And from empiric studies, we know that those who are able to delay gratification do better in life. Studies have started with children and measuring their ability to resist eating a marshmallow when they're offered two marshmallows 15 minutes later. And demonstratively, those who are able to wait can and have that ability that develop that strength to delay gratification do better. And also, if there's some spiritual practice that we lock onto every day, there is a kind of fortification. The mantra itself has two benefits, at least. At least these are the preliminary benefits that are mentioned. One is called vairagya, and the other one's called jnana. So, vairagya means you create some space. You develop a kind of strength that you didn't notice in yourself before to delay gratification, especially with things that you know may not be good for you. So, have you ever been in a situation where you knew something wasn't good for you, but you just did it anyway, and then you wondered, why am I doing this? Right when you're in the middle of it, going like, God, that's really weird. I'm doing this. It's happening right now, and I can't stop it. So when you develop spiritual strength through the mantra, in science, it's called excitation. There's a way in which there are two elements, and you introduce a higher energy to one of the elements, it rises above its current state. For instance, two tuning forks, and you vibrate one of them, the sound vibration hits the other tuning fork that wasn't struck, and it begins to vibrate also. Excitation means it picks up on it. So we pick up on it. The mantra resonates with us, and it gives us this called vairagya. Rag means to be attached to all kinds of things that aren't necessarily good for us. And so it gives us kind of strength, which is amazing when you see it in others. And you say, like, how were you able to avoid doing that? How could you stay home and study when there was a concert going on? It's like, well, I had the strength of purpose and so forth. Well, that gets stronger for those who have this vairagya. They know what to do, what's good for them, and they have the wherewithal to do it. And the other element is called gyan. Gyan means knowledge or perspective. And through gyan, we're able to see the difference between my body and myself. So let's just say you have a dishwasher at home, and it's not you, it's a machine. And you put your dishes in the dishwasher, and then you close the door, and you turn it on. And then you listen to it. It goes through the various cycles. Well, a person who's starting to develop gyan notices my body's kind of like, it's a machine, like a dishwasher. I put some food in, it goes through the cycles, it's digesting. My eyes are blinking. A lot of your eyes are blinking right now. You didn't mean to do that. In fact, you can't stop doing it. Nor can you stop breathing either. It's like a breathing machine we're on. It's going automatically. It's part of the material world that goes automatically, just as the sun and moon appear on the horizon and the universe is predictably moving at a certain pace. Our bodies are connected to that. They are part of the material nature. We're not. We're not part of the material nature. We're spiritual beings in a material body. So a person who becomes enlivened, or even, dare I even say enlightened, by chanting the mantra, this higher vibration, they start to develop this perspective that, yes, I'm in a body, but it's not me. And I have to take care of it and act appropriately in the world of names, but I'm different from the body. This is called gyan. So you get this and much, much more from the mantra. Let's look at a couple more slides. And keep in mind, when I'm showing you these slides and saying the things I'm saying, I'm trying to induce reflections coming from your side. So if you see like they say at the airport, if you see something, say something. Okay, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that, is this where we are, JM?
Yes.
In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that one's mind can be one's best friend or one's worst enemy. I love the graphics you put here. Is the mind enemy or our friend? So this is in the beginning of chapter 6 in the Bhagavad Gita, which is about meditation. And if the mind is out of control, it's our worst enemy. There is no worse enemy than the mind that's out of control. And when the mind becomes controlled, it becomes our best friend. So it's not always that the mind is disturbing. When the mind becomes controlled, then it's friendly to us. It helps us. So how do you make that happen? Mantra. Mind means mind, and tra means to train or to deliver the mind. So if you practice mantra meditation, your mind will become friendlier and friendlier. Next. Our minds are like factories that constantly manufacture stories assembled from billions of images that we take in through our senses each day. Next. Manudharma. So in the ancient yoga and meditation literatures, this complete dependence on and allegiance to the mind, it's called Manudharma, also known in a loose translation as the religion of the mind. Like, I just blindly believe what my mind tells me. Blind faith in my mind. It's kind of the religion of the mind. I just accept it. So yogis don't do that. Next. The mind creates all kinds of false stories. I'll give you an example of one I heard. I think it's in the next slide. So, man on the train. He gets on the train one day and he's riding along, and then more and more people are getting on, and he sees an attractive woman get on the train, and then when the train goes into a tunnel, there's a short circuit and the lights go out, and more people have come on the train, and he feels somebody who's standing right next to him, really close. So then he thinks, I think it's that person that I was attracted to. And then in his mind, as they're rumbling through the tunnel, he thinks, well, I think maybe she likes me. In fact, maybe we'll end up being friends or more. Maybe we'll get married. And won't my parents be surprised, because they said I'll never amount to anything and I'll never meet anybody nice. But then I'll show them, because we're married, and then we're going to have beautiful kids, and the house we're going to live in is amazing. And then we win the lottery, and we go to all the exotic beaches in the world. And as his mind is conjuring these images, the train bursts out of the tunnel into the sunlight, and he sees it's not the attractive woman standing next to him, but a person that he thought looked quite repulsive, actually. He was earlier repulsed by the person who had moved closer in the darkness just randomly. And that was the person brushing against him. And suddenly he jumps out of disgust that, oh, who's this person touching me? All this took place in the mind. And this example is given in the yoga wisdom literatures of the way that we create our reality around us, the mental construct of what we like, what we don't like, and so forth. In fact, if you want to hear something amazing, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the very beginning of the chapter on meditation, testing the yogi's level of consciousness, says a yogi sees pebbles, stones, and gold as the same. Pebbles, stones, and gold. So you can imagine if someone puts pebbles, stone, and gold before you and said, do you feel any differently about these three items? And the mind might say, gold, come on, of course, I want the gold. And I wouldn't blame you. It's more valuable. But just pointing out this perspective that a yogi who's developed this perspective that I'm not my body, and I'm also not part of the material energy. Well, gold and stones and pebbles, they're all part of the same energy. And so he or she, the yogi mind, would look at him and say, What's the difference? It's all lower energy. I don't make a differentiation between these. So you start to see the the machinations of the mind, the way we have a relationship with it, and so forth, and what it presents to us. I can be the man on the train going through this world, and I'm concocting all these ways that I'm happy, I'm distressed, and so forth. But then when we burst out of the tunnel and we say, oh, none of these things were actually real. They were all conjured by my mind. After all, the material is ephemeral. It's only morphing around us, perhaps a little slower than in a dream, but morphing it is. Okay, I think there's one more slide. Oh yeah, in fact, I just heard there was a song, I think, written by George Harrison, because there was a clip somebody sent me. There's a new movie about the Beatles, and he wrote this song, I me mine, I me mine, I me mine. And so this idea of mine, 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 Mother Earth's laughing, you just got here 5 minutes ago in geological time, 5 seconds ago, and you're going to be gone in 5 seconds. What is all this? I mean, mine. How can you actually claim you own anything? You own that property? Great. Let's see the next slide. You own this property? What about your body? This body you got? Someone says, I'm going to stay here forever. And Mother Earth, yeah, right. You don't even have a lease agreement to stay here. Not for the body, not for your property, not for anything. It's a highly combustible energy that we're surrounded by, and it's constantly moving. And it's not something that we have a real grip on. But when I think I have a grip, then that's when I start to suffer. Doesn't mean also that we give up all things. It just means we have a proper relationship with them and remember them in their proper position. I put a lot of slides today, so I'm going to read a few more and then we'll have a little discussion. Okay, overcoming the mind's demands. This is a series of verses I found from one of the ancient yoga literatures that just gives some indication of positioning oneself in such a way that we're not overcome by the dualities of the mind. And I'm going to read it to you if you don't mind. Are you ready? Okay. By making plans with determination, one should give up lusty desires for sense gratification. Similarly, by giving up envy, one should conquer anger. By discussing the disadvantages of accumulating wealth, one should give up greed. And by discussing the truth, one should give up fear. There's a couple more. By discussing spiritual knowledge, one can conquer lamentation and illusion. By serving a great devotee, one can become prideless. By keeping silent, one can avoid obstacles on the path of mystic yoga. And simply by stopping sense gratification, one can conquer envy. By good behavior and freedom from envy, one should counteract sufferings due to other living entities. By meditation and trance, one should counteract sufferings due to providence. And by practicing hatha yoga, pranayama, and so forth, one should counteract sufferings due to the body and mind. Similarly, by developing the mode of goodness, especially in regard to eating, one should conquer sleep. Okay, remember, I was reading all these and speaking about these things to induce reflections. So let's see. What did you hear that's stuck in your mind? JM, you can help me with the chat box. And anybody else who wants to speak up, guess what? It's a free room. You get to unmute and speak your mind. What did Sundar write?
Yeah, so Sundar wrote that the mind tells us false stories, and this many times also becomes a cause of misunderstanding in relationships.
Yeah, many times. Okay.
Mayank says we are surrounded by highly combustible energy.
Yep. Highly combustible.
And Rajesh has
Okay, go ahead. Rajesh?
Yeah, even the title itself is Actually, I think it actually gave me a very nice perspective, because we were trying to book a hotel and we are looking around, what level of comfort does it offer, this facility, that facility. And now just by seeing that discomfort word itself by design, it is just like that. So I just feeling like much relieved. I need to reset my expectation that I shouldn't be looking for a happiness in a facility which is by design is not going to give me happiness. So I'm much relieved actually by looking at the first slide itself. So thank you.
Yeah, such an excellent point, Rajesh. Thank you very much. And this is one of the points made in the yoga literatures, is that this world we're in right now is not our final destination. It's a springboard. So we have facility here to improve ourselves, to come to the best version of ourselves. But if I take it as a place where I can actually be comfortable, will be sadly mistaken. In fact, for yogis who are on this path, they don't they don't find discomfort to be a disadvantage. In fact, they take it as a reminder that I'm not my body. I'm not part of this world. I'm headed for a different destination. What else, JM?
A few more. Essence is mind is the reason for all miseries. How true? Mayank says mantra will make the mind friendlier and friendlier. Subhadra says, I was struck by the example of the man watching his head be cut off in the dream. And Nirali asks a question. Can you share that slide again? Sure. Which slide, Nirali, are referring to? And Victor's
last one. She said the last one.
Last one. Okay. Then Victor says, because we are creative beings, it is in our nature to fabricate these things in our minds out of what we see and hear in our surroundings. And Peggy says, we are separate from our bodies. We are spiritual creatures. Excellent reminder. And yeah, Nirali asked the last one, I'll quickly show. But, Tories has a point. Since started bhakti practices, my mind tries to distract me more. When sitting to chant the mantra, my mind tries everything possible to resist sitting still. It's as if my mind knows these practices will make it lose its control.
Yeah. Well, it also has to do with the fact that until you actually try to control the mind, you don't know how turbulent it is. Because if I'm just going with it, then I don't notice it. I give an example. A long time ago, I had a torn meniscus in my knee. And so I didn't notice it throughout the day, but when I would lie down at night, it started hurting. And I told the doctor, so he goes, that's because all your senses are calm and you start to notice it more, that there's no more distraction. It just comes in unabated. And oftentimes when we do meditate, try to control the mind, we'll notice more how it wants to run off. But I like your personification there, Tori, very much. And I think it was I like the way you said it. And Eric has his hand up.
Yes.
You mentioned that this is not our ultimate destination and that we're just here for a few seconds. I was wondering if you could tell us from the wisdom literatures if they describe more about what is the ultimate destination and what that's actually like and where we're going.
Yeah, well, actually, the way they describe it is that those who come into self-realization, which means knowing one's spiritual self, which is reality, even while living in this world, one feels as if one's reached the destination, because there's a way in which the only way I feel like a foreigner here is because of the agitation of the mind and so forth. So, to quote one of the old books, it mentions that the mind, and William Blake, the poet, also said this: the mind can make a heaven into hell and hell into heaven, depending on where how it's situated. So, a person who actually comes into self-realization and sees I'm not my body and I'm connected to the spiritual energy and I'm part of that, that person, even living in this world, is not disturbed. So that's the first step. And this, describing the other destination is there are realms that accommodate our own desires and consciousness. And those who are spiritually situated are facilitated with a higher realm. Okay, we have another hand up, right?
Yeah. Arash has a hand up. Please go ahead.
Please.
Hi, folks. Thank you very much. I'll try to make this very short. And I'm struggling with one item. What we're talking about is the mind currently giving us, let's call it negative interpretations of what's really happening, right? We have these negative movies in our head, and how do we control not having negative movies? On the flip side, we're saying, let's have positive movies, let's have positive outlooks and perceptions or interpretations. But just as we falsely interpret the negative side, we may also falsely interpret the positive side. So the question is, how do we properly, or how do I come to a point where I see what's real, when my perception is not really a perception, but it's actual, as close to factual as possible when I run these movies through my head, and I don't, I stop the negative, but I don't make up some weird positive vision that is just out there.
Right. It's an excellent point you make. And a movie's a movie, whether it's so-called happy ending or sad ending, it's a movie nonetheless. When the lights go on and you understand that that was a temporary presentation of light on a screen, then you don't identify with it the same way you do when you get absorbed in it, whether it's good or bad. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the kind of happiness and distress we feel in this world by identifying with the movie of our minds that's projecting the material energy, it's all bad. It's not that the happy movie is better than the sad movie. So what is the actual situation? And that is that we are not our minds and bodies, and we have a relationship with reality. This world is temporary, and we call it illusory, but actually what it is a reflection of reality, according to Bhagavad Gita. So when you see a reflection somewhere, it may look exactly like the original item. For instance, on a pond, you'll see on a reflecting pond, you may see a willow tree, and it looks exactly the same reflected on the water as it does on the bank. But the difference is one is more substantial than the other. In the case of the material and spiritual world, there is a reality in which the atmosphere is absolute. It's not temporary and flickering. And so when we start to identify with reality, as when I was reading those verses earlier, it said that we can overcome fear by discussing the truth. So that's what it means by truth, means sat, that which actually exists. And those things that are asat means they're just reflections of what actually exists. And if I identify with the reflection, the movie, then I'll feel unhappy. But if I see, okay, I'm real, that is, I'm permanent, even when this material body's gone, I'll still exist. And then I also have a relationship with our original conscious source. And that's what the bhakti literature start to get into. That's where our ultimate happiness is, in that connection that we have. After all, yoga means connection. Hope that wasn't too abstract. Okay. Yes?
Ash said thank you.
All right. I'm going to sing you out now because we started with a mantra, and let's sing a little more. What do you think? One more mantra? I need a quorum. Otherwise, I can't do it.
Yes, let's do it.
All right. Here we go. I'll sing a couple mantras, just hopefully melodically. And then you can sing along behind me to mics, and then we'll all go off happy. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Everyone behind muted mics. That's the beginning of that tune, and it ramps up from there in various other parts. And when you get a room full of people and you sing it with a little rhythm, then it becomes entrancing, and you're carried away by the mantra, and the power of the sound vibration really is purifying. So highly recommend the mantra meditation, of which today we just had a little taste. Okay, everybody. We came and did our best. And I thank everybody very much for your kind attention and for your excellent questions and reflections. And as the yogis high in the Himalayas, who come out of their caves from time to time to find some roots or fruits up in the high paths of the Himalayas, sometimes see one another up on high paths, and they're so delighted to see another fellow yogi out there that they raise their hands high in the air and they call out this phrase, which means keep the transcendental vibration going. And it goes like this: Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Thank you, everybody. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Hari
Hari
Bol.
Bol.
Have a beautiful day.
Thank
Bol.
you.
Have a great
Bye.
day.